I'm here in the studio with some beautiful people from Western Australia, as they call it these days. It's Robert Egginton. He's an artist, painter, poet, and spokesperson. And he also runs a thing called Dumbartung Corporation. He's here with his wife, Selena, and his nephew, Robbie. So welcome to 3CR Community Radio. It's a pleasure to have you. I've known Robert for some years. He was involved with the NAHO organisation, dealing with Aboriginal health issues back in the 70s and 80s. So, welcome to our program here, Rob. It's a real pleasure. And you're over here. You've got a video out. Actually, you've just produced a video called Massacre Grounds, and it's been put out there. I just seen it's pretty impressive, and it sort of gives you a great idea of what's happened, what colonialism, and what it's done to Indigenous people globally. So we get to talk a little bit about that, and also what you've been up to, and what's your thoughts on January 26th, Invasion Day, coming up in the near future.
Yeah, well, look, thanks, Rob, and Kaya Wanju from our people, which means we're happy to be here, and honoured to be here on Koori country, and we give our respects to your people and to the old people of the land here, and those that fought the forced occupation and had lost their lives in the forced occupation of our land, but particularly here in the area known today as Melbourne. And it's great to be here and to be humbled by doing this interview, Robbie, with you today, and for the Koori people to hear a bit about what we're doing in Western Australia. And I'll just make a quick mention before Selena may give a greeting, but yeah, the song Massacre Grounds is certainly a song that we've written, and has been a peak in my writing over many years, because I write a lot of presentations, and I've took this song from a number of those presentations. However, a week after it was released, I think it went to 5,000 views on Facebook, and then of course got locked down, as they say, and deleted by Facebook in terms of breaching its community standards. Yes. So yeah, so we're in the midst of trying to work that out with them at the moment, and that's a struggle in itself, but that's secondary. And
what's California and the tribal lands of California, and what happened to them people? Now these fellows, these big, huge corporations, talking morals and community standards to our people.
Look, Rob, and it's also in terms of looking at what happened to Indigenous people globally. It opens with a very powerful, I suppose, text message, and closes with it as well, because of course the privilege of the Western world has been built on the stolen lands of Indigenous peoples, and of course the wealth that lays under the grounds, and that's what's built up their privilege and affluency. So whether or not it's an issue to do with the what they would consider hate speech under their community standards, is a question, but we're having that addressed by Facebook as we speak.
Yes, and I've had some issues with them as well about community standards, and I sort of pointed out, well, where's the organisation is? It's on the blood-stained lands of Indigenous people, and soon let go of the problem. So they can hear us what we're saying too. We know that they're the eyes and ears around the place at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Facebook. But I need it. It's great for me because I get an opportunity to communicate with my family. We've never had this type of communication before, black fellas. It's been very it's been denied us, hasn't it? We haven't had our networks, and radio's just been a recent thing too. And that's I'm in this community radio because it's independent. And it's community-based, community-controlled, and I gravitated here naturally because that's what I live on, and this organisation represents that. It's it's the freedom of speech, isn't it, through an establishment that
not just promotes that, but encourages that. We've done a lot of interviews worldwide, actually, in the past through pirate stations buried deep in basements in San Francisco, in places like that have gone right through America. And, of course, it's all done illegally in terms of licenses and that. But, look, I think it's the only way to get the truth out. Because, the media in this country, we as Indigenous people know have censored our right of telling the truth. And, the truth is what this country is most fearful of, in particular Indigenous truths. And, to oppress our truth through media and the oppression of media is in the mainstream for us a well-known factor. And editors, of course, have got the power to, if you're doing something pre-recorded or articles for written media, newspaper articles, etc., they'll just edit it and make, their own interpretation from what you're saying, and all of a sudden something you're saying is completely different to how you've expressed it. So, media's got a massive control over how we tell our story.
To answer for in this country. Look at the race hatred indoctrination in this country started before they got here, and it was about the lies, the fraud, the deceit, the race hatred indoctrination here, which is backed up by a preemptive strike with a weapon of mass destruction.
Yep.
Namely the vials of smallpox, and the intent that they had to, and this was a healthy, robust society.
Yep.
That stood the test of time. We had sustainable laws, fair laws for everyone, no elevated rank.
Yep.
We operated in a community way.
I couldn't agree more, Rob. When you look at the type of psychological warfare and spiritual warfare that Aboriginal people are caught in, it's not just in the sense of technology through like military when they talk about weapons of mass destruction. But you're right, it's in terms of the media and the industry of media is a warfare against our people and psychologically, and so is religion, I believe, in the Western sense. They're all weapons of mass destruction against our people, and assimilation is a weapon of mass destruction in terms of our culture, our religious rights as Aboriginal people. The form of genocide
is the act of assimilation. It's a slow form of torture.
Absolutely.
And, look at the damage that's done. It's better off to kill someone straight off than torture them like that.
Yep.
That's what they've done. And, people don't know the gravity or the dimension, magnitude of crime seen in Australia. Where's our day in court?
Yep.
When are they going to address the Holocaust? We're the Holocaust survivors, colonised refugees, fringe and ghetto dwellers, and most incarcerated people on earth in our own country.
Absolutely.
And how do they justify that in the blood-stained, legally occupied democracy?
Yep.
They got some big questions to ask, but I think this brings us to the date January 26th, where it all began.
Yep.
And it didn't actually. It actually began earlier with Cook and Banks.
Yep.
Ruling the waves, waving the rules.
Yep.
They did the damage on the East Coast with and they were military. There was British military and corporate-backed British military. It was new style of warfare. Yep. Australia's like the last livable continent colonised, and they were very adept at how to destroy the Indigenous people by the time they got to our people. And we got the most ancients of most histories, and that's why they really wanted to knock it off here. Right? And if you have a look at this massacre map which is appearing, it's like covering the entire continent. Blood. For me, we've got to heal those ancestor spirits. This is why this place is burning, drying up, all these things. We know it's blackfly. We've got to do ceremony and stuff. And that's not happening. That's been, the real law has been denied here, and that's Australia's biggest problem, which is connected to the truth and all those other things.
No, absolutely. I think one of our biggest challenges in terms of the dispossession of our people from land and, of course, family and our spirituality and, it's been a process of where, through the stolen generations, the real sinister strategies of policies like that is, they absolutely created through taking, children and babies away from the breast of their mothers and fathers, but also separating siblings. So, in Western Australia, we, recently did a tour of all the missions for a program called Redress, where there was a form of compensation paid for all people who had suffered neglect and abuse whilst they were in state institutions. So, Dumbartung put up to run the tender for our community along with ALS, but they, based theirs on the bringing them home report. So, but Dumbartung really got into talking to our people at a grassroots and a very coal-faced part of our reality and community. So we were privy to hearing about all the very, day-to-day trauma and horror and terror that these young kids went through, Rob. And look, we came out, me and Selena, knowing that once Aboriginal people were split up the way they were, and not many people know these sorts of intricate details, is that what they did was they took away our human right, which is the most powerfulest emotion that a human being can have, which is love. They took away our ability as people, as a human race, to love. And that's why when all of the last of the mission people were released from the missions and migrated into the fringes of the big cities like in East Perth and try to connect back up with families. And I started working in East Perth when I was 24 years old, and I came across some of the most beautiful and the most talented, skilled people, because they learned how to survive in these missions. But, they were basically, through psychological and emotional pain, manifesting that into physical pain through, of course, the relieving of that by alcohol and, other substances. And they were dying at, not 47 as is quoted in Utopia, John Pilger's documentary, but they were gone by the time they were 30, 35, and it broke my heart to see that type of genocide happening before my eyes. But it was, taking away the love and the compassion from a person's being. And this is what people need to understand. You can't quarry that, and you can't give restitution to that simply by a sorry. They need to have to fall at our feet and actually beg for forgiveness, and then how they would, compensate Aboriginal people for this 230-odd year war that we're continuously fighting, because what those policies in those days reflect is what today's statistics are on incarceration, and in particular youth incarceration, juvenile incarceration, suicide pandemics that rage through our communities, and the darkness and the chaos of who we are as a people trying to survive. And that's a continued evolution of genocide. Genocide's not something that's got a beginning and an end. It unless a revolution is an uprising through people to stop genocide in its process, genocide will play out in many ways. So now it's deep inside the minds of our young people.
It's 75 years.
We're losing our young people at 8, 9 and 10 years old, because they now have an awareness that they don't want to live in a world that's broken and gone wrong to this point of where they can't survive, Rob, and that's the horror of what we're up against.
You're like you're telling our story here, exactly the same too. It was 75 years ago, I think this year, where they, the Menzies government back in 1949 was ordered to ratify and legislate against the crime of genocide in Australia. This is on the back of the Second World War and the creation of the United Nations. They created a thing called the Convention for the Prevention and the Punishment for the Crime of Genocide. Now, most countries took it on. Australia didn't put it in too hard basket. If that law, this is what they call a fundamental peremptory norm of international customary law. Australia hasn't got one. It's built on the lie of terra nullius, the legal fiction, the monumental lie on which I'll premise the entire country. No consent, evidenced by there's no treaties. That's like we're saying, we're in a state of undeclared war for 250 years. They turned up on our beach here, the 90-mile beach, Cooking Banks, about the 14th of April 1770. And we knew what their intent was then. All right? And we prevented them from landing on the east coast because we set fire to it. All right? Don't let these these terrorists landed here, And our people said back at that time that this was the beginning of the end of the world as you knew it. Our people would see, if they knew what was going to happen. 70 years later, we exterminated those people. We're the remnants, we're the Holocaust survivors, colonised refugees, fringe and ghetto dwellers in our own country.
No, absolutely, Rob. Look, off the coast of Perth, and it's a less than an hour's ferry trip lays a concentration camp known as Rottnest Island. In our language, we call that Wanjamump. When the fleet that Charles Fremantle navigated to the west coast and claimed it under the English Empire through the English flag.
That's a Dutch name, though. Rottnest, isn't it?
Yes.
It means rat's nest.
Yes. Yeah.
I know it's Dutch because Rotterdam and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So they were there earlier. So
well, those two buildings were the first erected in Western Australia, and the purpose of those buildings were to bring shackled and chained men. They were the first forced removal. Early 1800s.
Was it's close to 1802 because they'd done exactly the same in what they call Tasmania. They built Port Arthur and created a penal colony there. And when they got strong enough, they exterminated the mob there. When they got strong, they started penetrating the mainland and with military strategy and stuff.
Well, these men that were basically dragged to this death camp through the roundhouse. They weren't criminals and they weren't breaking law because the white man's law wasn't in the areas in which these men were taken from. So, it was a forced removal, and it was the beginning, obviously, of the genocide. The killing fields were obviously in full rage, and the massacres in places like Pinjarra and the Balladong people in York, they had all but eradicated those old peoples. And Rottnest Island was just somewhere where people were put to death. But today, and the real horror of it is, it's a worldwide known holiday destination. It's a place that you go to recreate. It's a place that celebrates the year 12 end of high school, where groups go over, and it's a drunken hovel, really. That's what it is. However, if you go to places like Auschwitz and Robben Island off the south coast of Africa, where they imprisoned Mandela and the other freedom fighters against apartheid, you would never, Rob, see those sorts of places of what we call Warra or Sikh turned into places like Rottnest Island. But the thing about Rottnest Island, of course, and the Roundhouse, is that the history of it is totally a hidden history. People just aren't aware of the fact they're sleeping on a shallow graveside and eating from a restaurant that was once, to call it a morgue would be underestimating it. Really, it was a slaughterhouse that chopped all the bodies, and the skeletal remains sent around the world for laboratory examination. So, to sleep and to recreate in a holiday sense on a destination like Rottnest Island is an absolute...
Are they aware of it?
Well, some people are aware of the history.
You think they would if they were fully down? The government wouldn't be telling them.
Well, but for us as Aboriginal people, Noongar people, it's an absolute continued torment of our spirit and our history. And again, if we go back and we look at this date of celebrating the nationhood's identity on the 26th of January, you can't separate those past atrocities because, as we talked earlier, they're still happening today. So, as far as Dumbartung and myself personally, and if I speak for my wife's opinion here, she will herself shortly, but we just can't find any longer in our being as Aboriginal people to even relate to Australia Day. And what does Australia in its word actually really mean? And I was talking to a journalist yesterday, and she was doing an interview. I said, well, look, Annabelle, do you know exactly what Australia means as a word? She said, well, no, I don't. And I said, well, neither do 90% of white Australians. I said, Australia is a Latin word meaning a place of the southern area, and that's all it means. And as Aboriginal people, we never knew the word Australia 230 years ago. Our Budja, we had our own sacred words for our country. And this word Australia and what identifies as an Australian is a fallacy. It's a myth, it's a lie. As you say, it's been built on a bedrock of genocide. And look, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't want to be part of it, other than to stand up and protest until the day I die regarding what this country's day of national celebration is.
Is there a solution here, Rob? Because that's pretty indicting sort of history here. How do we? I'm sure our mob don't want to be in a state of war all our lives. I'm keen to see some peace in my life.
Well, maybe we are in a war, and that war will be for all time. Because look, I don't, and I can't see how a history like this country can be healed. What type of reparation can be afforded Aboriginal people for, this horror of genocide. It leaves Auschwitz, and it even leaves some of the world wars into comparison lesser in terms of what they've done to our people. So, look, I don't think there's anything White Australia nor the world, United Nations or the Save the Children or Amnesty International could ever do. If it was going to be done, I think it would have been done to some degrees by now. So, no, look, I think, and I certainly let my young people in our families know that our warriors were born into this world to literally die for our human rights as Aboriginal people, and die if we must, die we will.
Wow. Well, that's right. Like a lot of our mob are feeling like that this country's definitely had its opportunity to come to terms with its, account for its history.
No, it's had long enough.
They still don't treat us like human beings, obviously. Like, they still don't, terra nullius is still the reality and what they're trying to achieve here. The country's launched really hard to the right, thanks to the Labor Party and their, help.
Yep.
And they've done nothing for our people, and none of these parties. But at the end of the day, none of them will recognise the law of the land here either. So that's unless they do that.
That's the first thing, of course, is our right to customary practice of our culture. So the only way in which it can be, I suppose, in some degrees, at least the beginning of a concept of healing is to give us back our land, so that our young people can go through a formal customary cultural practice on our land and connected to our land. But our culture through industry and through government policies that have just about dispossessed our people of our own culture, and white people will use it in this country as a part of their Australiana concepts, would be it's sad because our young people feel disconnected from their own right to our culture and our land.
I agree. There's just, they haven't got a leg to stand on in terms of in terms of their guilt in this country. So we've got Invasion Day coming up on January 26th. I think it might be a good idea to have a listen to your song Massacre Ground.
Yep.
It gives a nice description of there, but I think a lot of our people, we relate to that. There was 27 different mission stations, compounds, jails, reserves here in Victoria. They all got whittled down to 2. Lake Tyers and Framlingham. At one stage, there were 700 people left alive, and they'd already, 3/4 of them already had the blood of whitefellas in them, right? And this was in 1920, right? So you can, and this is a land of plenty here. Victoria was full of everything, it was a really healthy country, and and that was whittled down to about 700 people in about 1920. So you can imagine the nightmare, the horror, the terror of what our people went through. We were stable for hundreds of thousands of years, and organised society, very healthy people, and all disappeared overnight. They went from Stone Age to nuclear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overnight.
Yeah.
No recognition. We're still on the streets begging in our own country around here.
You've been the insult of having to be forced by elders.
I'll just fix that up.
the insult of having to be forced into welcome to country. That's a real insult.
It's an
I
absolute
find
absurdity.
and then they get around it by waving the almighty dollar in the face of our elders who are desperate for money to sustain their pension and their living, and they're out there welcoming nearly everybody to the country.
$500 a pop, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, Rob, if I can say, I think Welcome to Country is a very dangerous concept and initiative. I really don't know where Welcome to Country even merged from. I know that I don't think it was obviously an Aboriginal initiative. I think obviously governments had introduced that as they were pacifying our flag of resistance to be, a flag that now flies on top of Parliament House.
Cancels.
And, it cancels
it
pacifies the resistance and the strength of that. And as Selena's saying about Welcome to Country, the idealism that lies behind that obviously is so that white people can feel a sense that they're more guests and they've got a right of ownership and to be here. If we're going to continuously welcome them to country, what that does, it rectitudes the fact of, the moral racism issues in which they perpetrate against our people. Because how can we be talking about all these other issues and then compromise a hypocrisy in our own selves to welcome these murderers and these slave traders and this barbaric sense of what they've done to occupy Australia on one hand and welcome them on the other. Look, that's where the hypocrisy of our politics that's generated in the terms, as Selena says, of monetary and economic advantage, it must stop, and so must this party of celebrating this identity of this nationhood based on inclusion of Aboriginal people, because it would only be a very, I believe, small part of our population, hopefully, that would want to celebrate, because you're not just celebrating Australia Day, you're celebrating all its symbolics as well. Yeah, the flag, which is basically, when you look at the Australian flag, it's nothing more than, in the top corner is the Union Jack, based into the southern skies, where the Southern Cross is the dominant star.
Which is a dreaming story for it, isn't it?
Look, absolutely, Rob. So the flag itself represents the dominance of a forced occupation, and it's not just Aboriginal people, but people from all that now makes up multicultural Australia has to live under. So firstly has to go all these symbolics before we look at changing the date. And look, changing the date is not really the issue. I think Dumbartung sticks to its no date realism, and we don't believe that this should be celebrated in any way.
Well, rather than change the date, why don't we make the date called Independence Day? When we become independent from the Crown Force. It's something we could all celebrate together. Well, why they got an interest in this continent here? They got crimes to answer for, as far as I'm concerned. The Crown, and welcome them people. We can acknowledge the people who. When I get up there and do anything like that, I explain the history to them.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
And if you think you're welcome, you got to think about it again. It's time for not only people to pay the rent and justify their occupation. That's the story they're going to get from me. So I don't really get invited to those corporate things, but that's fine. We want to deal with reality. This has gone on for just a little bit too long, and they have they've created they've destituted Aboriginal people. They've created the conditions of life. We have to go begging cap in hand to people who are oppressing us. And one of the reasons why the NAO organisation, they had a policy called the pay the rent concept, and it was about that specific thing. This government's got a duty of care and a fiduciary obligation to the Aboriginal people of this land. That was they took it on. They made us ward to the state and done all these things, but they've criminally neglected us in terms of our welfare. So we've had to create our own organisations like the Health Service. A lot of them, they're not the same as they were, not the same like today. They're corporate bodies, and they've become the enemy of Aboriginal people. They've become appendages of the government, and they've been used. So it's another dimension of colonialism and control here. So anyway, we're still here. We still survive, and we've got January 26th coming up. It's 250 years of colonialism. unchecked, out of sight, out of mind Australia. They got away with a lot, but I think it's game over for colonialism because there's environmental, when that clashes, where's your economy coming from? And where's your air coming from? Where's your water coming from? And these things are going to impact on the whole planet it's happening right now.
Yeah.
The fires it's burning, these cases are burning for a reason. It's not because the blackfellas were looking after the country, it's because of the farmers, the loggers and the miners and all these people who've got interest in that business here.
Yep.
These occupiers, stray aliens, invaders, trespassers.
Yep.
And they can't deal with reality.
No.
And we need to deal with reality. We're lawful people, we've got law, and we're not going away.
Yeah, maybe just before the song goes on, Rob, a comment needs to be made that, in this country, through all the education curriculums and different influences, political influences and religious influences, people only understand history through the lens of the victors. So it's the people and the historians who represent the colonial process that's written the history, and that's the history we learn. We always hear people say, well, I learnt nothing about Aboriginal culture or people whilst I was at school or high school, and we can verify that as blackfellas ourselves because we were subject to the same denial. But look, until history is told by the vanquished lens, which is our people telling our story our way, and have the right to be able to incorporate that into a system of learning, well, people are always going to be denied that truth by deceit and lies. And, we often say to Wodjila people as they come into Dumbartung, well, look, if you want to live your life in a lie and a deceit and not pursue the truth by talking to Indigenous people and understanding our relationships with the earth and the land and our culture and the politics of what happened when our people were forcibly removed from that land, well, things in this country will never get better nor heal. And you're right, part of this whole Holocaust that we face as part of the dispossession and the massacres and the attempts to rid Indigenous people totally from the landscapes is resulting in the Holocaust against the mother and the Mother Earth, and that's why there's these massive ruptures of her spirit globally because she's trying to heal herself from the consequences of industrialism, agriculturalism, and all that makes up the privilege of the Western world, because at the end of the day, that's what's destroying her. And they know if they continue to do this, what they're doing is they're digging the grave site for all of humanity, and unfortunately even us as Indigenous people, Aboriginal people, will slip into that grave site along with them. So, that's why we won't have anything to do with Australia Day. It's not just in the sense, and some Aboriginal people do feel a sense of confusion because they think celebrating Australia Day somehow is celebrating the landscapes and the culture of the old stories of this land and that. But Australia Day is their birthday. And all they're doing is celebrating the social structures, the establishments, the cities, and their way of life they've created on our landmass. They can climatise themselves, white people, anywhere in the world. And through that climatisation, they control through their technological power the base of that country. So they don't know anything about this country's ancient histories or us as people. So to wipe that out to them is nothing, because all they do is look at the land in terms of economics. Once you start as an Indigenous person to look at our land as economics, then you become a stranger to its spirituality.
Exactly. I call it the genocide, ecocide, suicide parallel, and that's that's a reality for me. I'm pretty sure it is for a lot of other people, and I think that's starting to dawn on the global community too. They're starting to hear what Aboriginal people have been trying to say to them for all this time. You hear people like David Suzuki and the other naturalist guy, what's his name? David Attenborough.
Yep.
They're arrived.
They know.
It's taken them a while, the science. And they've completely denied our humanity, our human rights, our genius. Like they wait for us to die so they can, collect copy on their booty here. Yep. So there's never been I think this is it for me. I think 2020 is like the tipping point, one way or the other. You've got to either recognise the law of the land or we're going to perish.
I agree.
And you've got to start by healing with the ancestor spirits. Where, how do you have a democracy on blood-stained, illegally occupied land?
Yep.
And I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of our people around the world.
Absolutely.
And the thing about Australia, we haven't got a treaty, which is an incredible statement in terms of our resistance, and also the intent to destroy by this wider community here. So it's an incredible situation. We're saying if there's going to be a treaty, it will be on our terms and conditions, and there's non-negotiable aspects of it, namely our sovereignty and the issues of genocide and the surrounding issues, and cleaning out the criminal element here. If you want to survive, and step up. This is in your own interest. You can see your own mortality now. Your kids are starting to worry about the earth. I know that these other older people don't, but the kids are worrying about it, Like they say, well, should they go to school when they haven't got no future? You've got to step up, and that's been for us all the time. There's no options other than to fight back. There's an old saying: if you don't fight, you lose, and that's what will happen. So we need to step up. This is it. This is the moment of truth, D-Day, the day of reckoning.
Oh, the era is upon us. There's no question that if activism and a form of cultural revolution, and people going through an uprising, so that we can deal with these atrocities and this crossroad, as you say, Rob, that we're at, of where if we don't turn now, there is no turning back, if it's not even too late at this point. And but I think as Aboriginal people, and I certainly know in the southwest, that to get our young people, as we said earlier, back into a process of customary practice of our culture, and to get them reconnected to believe in our old people's way of life, and that's balanced somehow with a right to education. But I, as a person and an individual, I believe our spirituality and our cultural knowledge is far more important and surpasses that of the white man's education systems. And I think with our young people, to make them strong and to create a resilience in them against the challenges they face as a result of this ongoing genocide, such as youth suicide and incarceration, drug addiction. In Perth, it's just rampant. There's not a family, Rob, that is not affected by these horrific outcomes that create such trauma and pain, and it is a deliberate form of the continued genocide. But our culture, I believe, is what they took away from us to destroy us. So it's us as senior and more older Aboriginal people that need to re-implement culture back in the lives of our young people to create their strengths as who they are, and more importantly, to create the sense of belonging to the connection of the land, because in that land is the only medicine that can heal our people's lives.
The land is the only medicine, and prevention is the best cure.
Absolutely. So we can't let her be destroyed by the greed of the white man's world of consumerism and his privilege. We've got to, again, as we said, fight until there's no more fight left in us.
And not every people do themselves a favour by recognising land rights, and our culture is about sharing and caring. That can't be a problem, If you want to be greedy, selfish, ignorant, aberrant monkeys, well, you know where you're going to end up. Yeah. So, it's time to step up, mob. Selena, what do you do? With, do you work in? Sounds like you've been working on issues of stolen generation stuff.
Yeah. Well, Robert and I have been working together for over probably 30 years, but more so in the last 15 years. I've been very active in Dumbartung in ways of working with our Noongar women in terms of healing through, we utilise art therapy to heal the broken spirits of our women, particularly our young women, and also culture. So at Dumbartung through...
How did Dumbartung come about? Because I'm sure a lot of people would love to be able to do that in the communities.
We've just recently got up a new website, which is dumbartung.org.au, and that's the whole it gives the whole overview history of Dumbartung, how we commenced and our projects and all our campaigns that we've been involved with over the 30 years. And a lot of that, Rob, has been to do with healing and spirituality and believing that our culture is the best therapy, and connection to land through that spiritual connection is the best medicine for our people, and particularly our young people.
And we can't underestimate the fact that Dumbartung's story, that's now pursued after by many, many people, has been a 32-year history of maintaining our right to belong and to exist. We've been under immense government assassination attempts. Governments have tried to close Dumbartung many times, and spiritually something will always process Dumbartung to continue. We've seen prime ministers come and go, premiers come and go, Rob, ministers come and go, and they've all had their attacks against Dumbartung way back till the year was in 1988, the bicentennial year, were the big attacks, and of course during the Kayana years, which people say are the biggest Aboriginal cultural gatherings in living memory in this country. We had 30,000 people at the second Kayana. I was talking to Lyle Munro not long ago in Redfern, who said, when he saw the Kayana videos, he saw his brother on the video. So, they act as archives and mirrors to the past in our community.
Archives,
so
who owns our archives? Like if Institute of Aboriginal Studies could educate this country about who we are and what we are, they've got all that information. So it was always universities. They know who we are, but they're not allowing that information to flow.
Of course.
These non-Aboriginal people control our information, academics, and they come out and interpret it, There's issues going on right now with people misrepresenting Aboriginal people. That's always been an issue. This white fella been trying to get black fella to represent when they used to put what they call them king plates around their neck and queen plates around their neck. So you're the leader, you can negotiate on their behalf, So, I'm worried about all of that stuff that's in there and all the stuff that we've got around the world, all of our people's remains. Yeah. The evidence of the genocide is there. Where's the law here, It's a lawless country.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest threats in which Dumbartung posed to government was, again, telling our history, the way in which we told it through a vanquished lens, through our own lens as Indigenous people, because that's what they fear the most in this country. Multiculturalism, and they fear, and you will hear in the news often, about the issues dealing with the the Muslim people and terrorism and those sorts of terrorists. But really, the main political threat of to white Australia is our rights as Aboriginal people to the very land they stole from us. And it's now obviously referred to as native title. Native title offices are all set up around the country, but they're all based on economics and royalties from companies and that. But land rights in the days... Well, the days you were referring to, Rob, earlier about pay the rent concepts were the same days as land rights was an issue. And I think, Aboriginal rights in this country still remains the biggest threat to white Australia and its establishment here, and we've got to keep up this fight. But again, when you look at the way they've assimilated our people through the education system, and you've got a lot of elite blacks now that are in positions of government that are actually signing away our rights to industrialists to blow up our sacred sites and develop iron ore deposits in the Pilbara. I won't mention any names, but they know who they are, and they're well-known advocates from the past who have fought for the rights of their people at a grassroots level, but are now working with these industries because they gave up. They gave up their fight for our humanity and our rights as Aboriginal people. And that's always been the biggest problem in our communities, not so much just fighting the white people and their establishments and institutions, but also fighting the people that they've incorporated from our own communities. There will always be black trackers in this country, and there has been for 230 years, and they're today in academic. Everyone here has a PhD.
infested,
There's a associate professor or a doctor in every community, but
God.
nothing ever changes.
You know that there was a treaty in this country in 1835, Batman's Treaty. You know the only employment that came out of that was the native police force.
Oh, yeah.
So and that's been you can imagine the story. You know, that in between what they're talking about now, and they're not even mentioning all of that. They just want to leap to it. Oh, we'll sort this out. Forget about that. You know, it's not going to happen.
No,
It's insulting and offensive what's going on at the moment.
Yeah.
But you know, truth's our weapon. The ancestors are on our side. You know, and this is the land of Bunjil, the Eagle Hawk, the creator here for this country, and very powerful law here that we had. This is my mother's law, and my father's law is the pelican, the Burra and the pelican, and Bunjil the eagle. My name's Jiran Bunjilani Burra Mundundarung, the eagle and the pelican. And you know, we've got an amazing history. They just discovered a site down there. You know, I've known about it for at least 30 years, this site. It says that we've been here for 120,000 years. The further they dig and scratch, the further we go back. Right? We told them we're from New Guinea, and they're not listening. You know, they don't want to listen to the reality of the dream time at their peril. And what they've done to this country, you know, well, it's the payback time. It's out of our hands. Like we tried to explain and we tried to stop all this destruction. Anyway, we've got to heal ancestors. That's the only way I can see out of this. And if they fair income, come and join us on Sunday, all you non-Aboriginal people, because you know, this is in your interest too, and your children's interest. And you know, so step up now. Let's get rid of this criminal element that controls our lives.
Yeah, look, Rob, I think, you know, as you were just mentioning your totems and your connection to your totems, and in our country and right around this country, most totems are connected to bird life. And of course our totems are the red-tailed black cockatoo is our fire bringer, and our moieties are the wadong, which is the crow, and the manage the white cockatoo. And I've often talked to my grandson here, he's not my nephew, my grandson.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, he's Robbie the third. And Rob was always interested in dinosaurs when he was a young boy, and spoke about the dinosaurs and would say, Grandpa, you know, that dinosaurs are the only living entities to the dinosaur families today are birds. So therefore, you know, when you look at the time and who can put a time on the existence of Aboriginal people, we say since the beginning of time immemorial, and all of those totemic relationships that we merged from that bird life into a human form, and then created fire where we could get the warmth and we could protect ourselves at night from the spiritual world. We could cook our foods, and would give us light as we travelled in night. And you know, fire was so important.
Law? Is that the divine?
It was. I think it was just the way in which we connected in the most profound of any human race that's ever inhabited this earth, in terms of how close our connections was to the earth, understanding the earth, our stories. It was pure spiritual. Well, Rob, our name for when a woman is pregnant and she's got fetus in the tummy, we call her, she's Bujari. And our name for our land is Buja. So our old people's way believed that the significance of the sacred areas that a woman would tread upon would impregnate her body into the spirit of the land. And of course our mother and the earth. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We wouldn't be alive if our mother wasn't alive.
That's right. It's in our interest, land rights for all people on this planet.
Yep.
And one day it's going to, you know, either come or, you know, there's peril ahead if you don't want to recognise those things. And I think the whole planet's realising this. Maybe a little bit too late, but you know, we're going to have a go. Now listen, Rob, I've got your video lined up. Sorry, Selena, I've not been having more say here.
That's perfectly fine. I'm used to Rob talking.
We've got a couple of shows on. My partner does a show on Monday. She does a thing called Blak. Name's Vivian. She's a Guniandi woman, Bunaba woman from Kimberley, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful culture, under threat at the moment. Really saddens me to hear what's going on. Right next door they live to there's a place called Fossil Downs, an old cattle station where she lives, Gina Reinhardt.
Yes.
right next door to this community. And then, anyway, it's all sad right around this country what's going on. It seems like the miners, the loggers and the farmers are getting the land rights and the rewards, and poor old... Anyway, it was horrible what happened to them, what happened to our country, and worse, and what happened to all our totems out there. Just
absolutely
got erased there, you know. So, anyway, we've got January 26th coming up. That's on the Sunday this year.
Well,
so I'm hoping to see you mob there.
Well, it's our main purpose for being in Melbourne. For many years, Rob wanted to come across for the protest rallies in Melbourne for Australia Day. They seem to dwindle out a bit in Perth and have been absorbed into mainstream activities and events. So we made a commitment this year, me and my wife Selena, to come to Koori country. And and I want to say, if I can, and do a bit of an acknowledgement. I've got to know a young man here in Perth, Neil Morris, and he's one of the rappers, and I sort of connected with him through one of my nephews, Josh, and Josh opens up this song Massacre Grounds with the Pinjarra massacres. And when you said globally it travels, and it does, we look at the massacres in Africa at Wounded Knee with the Lakota people, the Aztec, the Inca, the Maori massacres, and also, of course, what happened to Cook when he thought he was sailing in beautiful, pristine blue skies into the white sands of Hawaii, and he didn't know what was waiting for him.
How can people get access to this video? If they
all through YouTube, or through Dumbartung's Facebook site, which is my name, Robert Egginton, or through Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation. But we are, as I said earlier, fighting the system at Facebook to have it launched back up, and we will know within the next couple of days. We've got a good connection in Facebook at the moment, who's doing all he can to lift the lock and to reopen this truth to the public and to the world, to hear what actually happened to the world's Indigenous peoples.
Thank you so much, Robert, Selena and Rob Jr. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
And, our pleasure.
Have they offered you a little bit of the stage there on the rally?
No. We're here to
because
be
I've got a little bit of time on that. So if I've got time, you've got time, brother.
Oh well, I appreciate that greatly. I'd like to at least bring a message from our people to the Koori mob, and to acknowledge from Dumbartung that Noongar people are here, standing in solidarity
and rebuilding our old songlines there.
Most important.
Really incredible. We all connect through that, and our totems. It's incredible how our totem law can. Yeah, I think that's the answer.
Well, a big part of our fight, Rob, if I can, is creating the unity and the solidarity amongst our people, and breaking down these divisions. And I think, we can identify where those divisions are obviously, becoming greater, but I think as a people that we still got that spirit, and we still got that culture, that we can bring ourselves to a position of strength through the unity, because it's the only way which we're going to win this war, is by unifying all our clans across this country.
And one thing that we have done, we've won because we've survived to this point, and what we all just mentioned, what happened to our people, So it's something we're really proud of for Blak.
The stories keep being told.
I've been putting it out there. Some mob like Neil might be able to write this song. I'm looking for the victory song and the victory dance, so we can start singing that stuff and living that, making it real, and bringing it all back. And start, so. Yeah, once again, thanks you, mob, for coming. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Rob, for having us.
Rob,
So here's their song. I'm right on my brother Joe's Music Matters time, but I'm going to play this song anyway. I hope you understand, Joe. This is called Massacre Grounds, and you can get that online and spy it. Dumbartung. What's that name about?
We of the People.
We of the People. Beautiful. All right. Cheers.
Yep.